I know the students say that it's hard because I have to think, but that's a good thing, and that's why I like it.
That they move away from that recycling their own ideas and into being more capable of analyzing not only the logic of what they're reading, but also the implications of their thinking.
I've pulled a quote from one of the Paul Elder books on creativity, and the quote is, "Thinking is the art of thinking about thinking. We create and assess, we assess what we create, and we assess as we create." And as a visual art teacher who's interested in incorporating teaching in visual art, through visual art, and about art to my students, I think that those ideals really apply.
I had to incorporate critical thinking questions that would help me evaluate the student. I used questions that were centered around accuracy, relevance, breadth, and logic, and it helped me create an atmosphere for the student, something that's a little more general, a little more worldly sense of applying knowledge instead of just to a specific problem.
I can remember the first couple of months of being a new teaching assistant. I was very nervous. I actually lectured a lot the first couple of days, and then it clicked. I remembered the CI method, and I started using it and saw results pretty immediately from a class that didn't talk much to a class that became willing and more comfortable speaking aloud. And there was actually kind of a playing off between me and my students.
We used common language to delineate some of the concepts in the class, and I recognized it as the Paul Elder framework.
I feel like I would use this model much more throughout my college career.
I think the greatest benefit to me by participating in the faculty learning community was finding ways to engage the students in their learning, to encourage their thinking, and especially their reflective thinking.
I also like the model because it helped me to articulate my expectations in the class better.
I think the greatest benefit for me was that my teaching became very intentional.
The biggest benefit was it forced me to focus on the critical concepts of the course, and I get away from the idea that I had to cover everything in the text in detail and think about what I wanted students to be able to do the year after they got out of my statistics course.
The greatest benefit that I got, well, there were several benefits. I liked the way that things were broken down. That critical thinking is such a big term, that things were broken down so that you could actually sink your teeth into each separate concept, and you know exactly what to look for. And one great benefit of being at FLC was that you have so many other colleagues to talk to discuss ways, because otherwise teaching can be a rather sort of isolated experience.
I had to really apply myself to the critical thinking in the tutoring center, and so it really carried over into my own studies when I was in the classroom, and if I was looking for intellectual autonomy in a student and perseverance, I know what characteristics qualify as perseverance and autonomy. I noticed in myself, I'm in the classroom and I'm trying to answer a question, I can't help but think in a more critical thinking sense. So it's really actually improved me as a student as well as a tutor.
The changes that I've made in my work from participating in the CLC including my staff in our projects that we're working on with our advisors. For instance, we're developing a pilot program for advisors to work with students using the Paul Elder framework. We're hoping that advisors can use this framework in helping students think things through that are on academic warning, so it will bring them to come up with a plan to come back to good academic standing.
I've recently had the opportunity to really kind of try out these critical thinking concepts and tools with undergraduate students that I've worked with through internships with the Office of Civic Engagement, Leadership and Service, and really designing a way for students to gain leadership experience through a community partner that they're working with, but not just through the traditional, I show up and do my volunteer hours and that's given me leadership experience, but to really delve deeper into it and think about, this is a skill that I want to improve, and how can I plan out an activity that benefits myself and benefits my community partner in a way that helps me develop my leadership skills.
Being part of the CLC and becoming more intimately familiar with i2a has been a fantastic gift for us, I think, this year, both personally as a professional and also programmatically. Professionally, I feel like I have a much better sense of what critical thinking is, what our faculty are going for in the classrooms. I feel much more connected to the academic side, and that helps me to develop programs that both our faculty will find meaningful and our students will find meaningful, finding that balance.
The university's approach of adopting a common model that students will see repeatedly throughout their curriculum will be extremely helpful.
I suspect that I'm not the only person who values critical thinking and expects it from students, but doesn't stop to think about whether or not I'm modeling it very well for students. I suspect that many times when I drew conclusions, students thought that I was making some kind of intuitive leap that they could accept but probably didn't quite follow, because I wasn't intentional and deliberate in showing how I thought my way through that kind of process. And I think that's probably true for many of us, that the Paul Elder model's an excellent way to have a shared language, to have students realize that despite the differences of our discipline, that there is something called thinking like a college student, and that when they come to UofL, it's time to start thinking like a college student.
The work that I've done through CLC has also provided a great discussion among colleagues, and a lot of it is how can we talk about critical thinking outside of the classroom, and how could we promote critical thinking outside of the classroom. If students are getting all this from faculty, well, certainly our job as administrators here at UofL is to continue that talking and just sharing of ideas outside of the classrooms.
What the i2a has offered is the opportunity for student affairs and academic affairs to speak a common language, to speak in unison to students. And I believe that students notice that, they will notice it, and they will have a much stronger experience at this institution. So I am very committed to continuing to practice the language so that we can be sure that the students have the ultimate experience that the plan has had in mind all along.
I like to think of i2a as a toolbox, and it gives you different tools to take out, to apply to a given situation and apply some of the common language. So for me, that asset, or the ability to take out your tools in a situation, is what i2a really is about.
I think it's bringing our campus together. We all are headed off in a lot of different directions, and that diversity is something we very much value here at UofL, but also it can sometimes mean that we don't come back together as often as we can and should to share ideas, to collaborate, to partner, to learn from one another. And I think that i2a and the work that we're collectively doing towards that common goal supports our campus as a whole, supports community building, and supports a really engaged learning environment that we can all find a place in.
I think the Ideas to Action initiative could very well be a groundbreaking initiative that takes advising to the next level at UofL, and quite honestly could give us national recognition.